Hello, readers. This is Justin's 52 Books, where I discuss my selections for the 52 Book Club's 2023 Reading Challenge. And this year, I'm only reading science fiction by women for my reading challenge. Maybe some adjacent genres like fantasy, magical realism, that kind of thing, but really want to focus on the legacy of women writing science fiction with my reading challenge. And I'm going to actually talk a little bit about the reasons behind that here in a little bit. This is week 9. And I'm talking about prompt 9, a book with a dedication. My selection for this prompt was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, written by Becky Chambers, and put out in 2014. I was surprised by how long ago this is actually put out, coming up on 10 years next year. So a bit of an oddball prompt, as I think most readers generally don't even look at the dedications, and hey, it's not for me, it's for someone else to read. But yeah, kind of, or at least I kind of assume most, if not all, books, particularly fiction, have a dedication, which made this a bit of a gimme. And that's fortunate, because I don't really have a whole lot of gimmies this year. What I did have was a fairly large list of books I wanted to tackle this year, and I figured I'd be able to put into prompts, and Becky Chambers was on multiple occasions at the top of that list, and I've never read her. So this is my chance to jump at The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and really finally get to find out what Becky Chambers is writing about. And I am so glad I did. On its face, simple space opera. And for those who are kind of uninitiated or unaware of what that means, or not comfortable with that term, just kind of means just old school science fiction. But a couple criteria to kind of put yourself into the frame of reference for space opera: populated space. So you got planets, might be humans, might just be aliens, might be a mix of both, but populated space. We go out to other planets, we are engaging with other planets, and we are out there with spaceships or whatever. Melodrama, which I haven't really thought about and kind of has a bad connotation, but melodrama would be another facet of typical space opera. And let's define melodrama, because I know I've heard it, I know I say it, I know what I'm thinking when I operate with that word. But really, all that means is just a plot with a strong emotional appeal. I had to look it up just to make sure I knew what I was talking about, because we toss that word around a lot. But strong emotional appeal, and then existential stakes, at least in terms of written fiction about space opera. Existential stakes, the universe is going to be consumed, or the galaxy, or maybe just the planet, or maybe in terms of maybe a little bit more YA fiction, YA space opera, a family, or a person's secret, or something like that. But existential on some level. And a little bit of a hat tip to the Coode Street podcast. That's Gary K. Wolfe and Jonathan Strahan. It's something I listen to quite often. They just recently had a podcast about space opera where they were talking about these 3 criteria. And I thought it fit really well with this discussion. So thanks to them. So about the book, you have the Wayfarer, a spaceship that is a space tunneling ship. And her crew taking on a new administrative officer at the beginning of the story. The admin, Rosemary, makes an excellent narrative device because she is competent and she is helpful, but she's also very new. So she gets to have everything explained to her, and all the experiences, or experience everything from a perspective of someone new who hasn't been there before, just like us readers. And we get to move along with her as she meets the crew. And we all fall in love with them. Kizzy, Jenks, Dr. Chef, Sizzix, Corbin, Lovey, and the Captain, Ashby. That's right. You have a ragtag band of lovable space travelers, and you quickly become a part of the family. You know what? I've seen that TV show before. I love that TV show. And this is okay, because I didn't get enough of that TV show at the time. So it's okay. I've seen people talk about it being a little derivative, the book, or Becky Chambers' writing, at least the Wayfarer series. if you do it well enough, it doesn't matter anymore? I would argue that no. So yeah, we fall in love with this crew, and follow them on their adventures through space. In the book, the crew gets the opportunity to do a long run, a profitable run, punching holes through space and establishing, I guess, through a series of wormholes, an intergalactic highway that goes to the small angry planet. It's unstable due to political factions, and that's where we go with the story. Some things I loved. Well, like everyone else, and like what you're designed to love, I love the crew. And specifically, I love the inhumanity of the crew. Lizard people and AI and space physicists who survive through their mutually dependent viruses, and the list goes on. Chambers isn't just using aliens as an output for her imagination. She's using it as a lens from outside humanity to view humanity, and to better understand humanity. Whether it's grasping with otherworldly mores about sex, birth, and family, or dealing with end-of-life norms and decisions that you might not disagree with, or that you might disagree with, or even dealing with and accepting love when it would be culturally impermissible. There's so much familiarity to Chambers as aliens and AIs, and even people, that you can't help but see things from their perspective. And it's that word I want to talk about, perspective, because it can't be stated clearly enough that it's the perspective of the characters that makes the story work so well. It's the perspective of the characters that provides their motivation. All the characters have their motivations clearly spelled out and discussed in The Long Way to the Small Angry Planet, which seems like such a simple thing to do. But all too often, particularly in mediocre science fiction or classic science fiction, it's the actions of the individuals that take the place in a void of plot. The characters do things because the story needs them to do that thing, and the reason for doing the thing is the outcome of the story, rather than any personal motivations beyond something simple like revenge or getting home or making money or whatever. The plot is the reason for the characters. In Chambers' book, the characters are the reason for the story. Sometimes that can spell trouble for authors as the plot degrades away to indefinability. But Chambers does such an excellent job that the plot kind of takes care of itself. It doesn't become secondary, it just becomes an environment. I love that. I love the treatment of the characters, and I love that we are bringing them to the forefront and that they have that much to teach us about ourselves. Some things I didn't like, there's nothing I didn't like about the book. But there is one thing that I don't like regarding the book, and that's the implication. I've seen Becky Chambers discussed this way and that on Reddit and Facebook book clubs, and with growing and glowing esteem by some readers, to the point where I was wondering if it was a little bit overblown. But I never saw that I'm aware of, and I never see that praise leveled by men. And I don't know what it is. Men do seem to really avoid female authors. I hate that, but I do feel like it's true. And that's a shame, myself included. This book has been out for 9 years, and I'm just now getting to it. Why is that? Well, there's a bunch of other books, older books, bigger books, more notorious books, that I gave my attention to. And I like to think that wasn't driven by chauvinism, and that they were legitimate pursuits of interest that drove those decisions. But who knows? One thing I do know is that this is quality and should be read by as many people as possible, including and maybe especially men. And I think I'd like to wrap up there with just one last point to make. There isn't an idea in this book that is truly original, and that might feel overly critical. But I was thinking about it. The viruses, the lizard people, the punching the holes through space, the factions on the planet, the Galactic Consortium or Galactic Commons, all ideas that you can find somewhere else in science fiction. But where else in writing do we give mediocre writers a pass on mediocre writing when their ideas are good? The big three science fiction writers, Asimov, Heinlein, and Clarke, Asimov especially, are beneficiaries of this. It's high time we take those ideas that they molded and fashioned and join them up with wonderful writing and make something fresh and new. And that's exactly what Becky Chambers has done. She's taken the constructs and the assumptions and the foundations, no pun intended, all right, pun intended. She's taken the foundations that science fiction has built upon for years and years and years and placed her incredibly appealing and indelible characters into these constructs and that we call science fiction. And in doing so, she's made something for the rest of the reading world to look at and find the beauty of science fiction in. If you can't tell, it's really important to me to open up these gates of science fiction that are held by people who saying that, no, you can't read that, you need to read this. No, let's just read it all, and let's read what's good. And this is really good, and I was really happy to have read it. Some other books for the prompt. Well, Ursula LeGuin is always good for a good dedication. So obviously check out The Left Hand of Darkness or The Dispossessed. Other non-female science fiction books I can think of. Walter Miller's dedication of A Canticle for Leibowitz is in prose form. Any excuse to read that book is good excuse. Kind of called him out earlier, but Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land actually, the dedication for that actually gives a hat tip to Philip Jose Farmer. I think the interpretation of that is that that Farmer was really trying to make science fiction consumable for an adult audience, and that's what Heinlein was aiming for with Stranger in a Strange Land. Whether, no matter how you feel about it, that's what he was aiming for with that. And then if you really want a heartfelt, this is heartfelt work that makes you feel good. If you want something heartfelt that makes you feel good, read the dedication to Carl Sagan's Cosmos. That'll make you feel good. Thanks for watching me talk about my thoughts on The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This has been week 9 of Justin's 52 Books, and I was talking about Prompt 9, a book with a dedication. For more information on the prompts of the 52 Book Club, check them out on their website, the52bookclub.com. You can check them out on Goodreads and Facebook and Instagram. I'm pretty active on the Facebook comment section, so maybe see you there. You can check me out on Goodreads and Storygraph and Instagram, Justin's 52 Books. Hope to see you next week for Prompt 10, a book that takes place during the Roaring Twenties. And I'm pretty sure some people are going to get irritated by the idea that I called this science fiction, but that's okay. Until then, happy reading.